got red and blue, but we're kind of all mixed up everywhere. I've heard theories of, you know, rural versus urban, that kind of thing. There's all different ways, but how, you know, do you think it's just going to be a regional thing? How do you envision secession to take place if some of these legislatures start actually voting for it? I mean, what happens when you got an isolated state over here that votes for it, but they're surrounded by states that don't? So
yeah, it's a hard idea to wrap your mind around, because taking something that fundamental and that big of an issue from theory to practice is well, obviously it's going to be difficult, but you would, I guess in theory you would have some, I mean, because it has already been presented and it has already been talked about in at least a couple of the state legislatures, and on a county level you've got the Greater Idaho movement where it's actually gained some traction with elected officials. If America goes, and I'm not saying I necessarily want to see that, I'm just saying I don't see how you can live with this other side.
yeah,
I don't see how you can live with them, and if you can't live with them, and if you can't be at peace with them, you know, certainly let them go and have their blue state utopias like California that is just, you know, entirely bankrupt and crime-ridden, and just let them enjoy all of those fruits of diversity.
Would it be helpful if a state like California was the first to secede?
That would be a dream come true if they did the job for us. I just don't think we're going to get that lucky that that the left is going to be the ones to secede. But I think it would be something like what we saw originally. You know, a couple of states do it, and then others do it. I mean, the Confederacy swelled from a couple of states to 11 in no time. And obviously there's a lot more states now, and it is not just the North and the South now, but it is still, all of the South is still, yeah. That's where Trump's voters are, except for Virginia.
Questions come out.
Yeah, but it would be, I mean, if it's a Texas or a Mountain West state, if anybody has the courage to do it and actually get the ball rolling on that, then you'd see other states go. But it wouldn't be a, you know, just a line across the country. It would be all over the place. It would be.
Yeah. Could get messy.
Well, you know, nobody wants that. You know, I'm a husband and a father, and I don't want, you know, my family to have to endure things like that. But yeah, sure it could. I mean, history teaches us that a lot of these, you know, very rare is do you have something like what happened in Russia where the wall goes down and a couple of decades later you got somebody like Putin. I mean, but they suffered. I mean, they suffered a lot before they got to that point. So you don't want to see it, but you can't discount it.
Yes. So go ahead. You go first.
How do you solve this huge problem with education the way it is today?
I love the whole idea of course, abolishing the Department of Education, which...
Yeah, I was excited about that.
And that was what Trump said, Linda McMahon, and I also love the fact that the founder of WWE's wife, or divorced wife, is now the head of the Department of Education. But, I mean, certainly dismantling that first, I mean, you're going to have to turn it back to the states, because these states, I mean, again...
The universities are so powerful, though, and they're putting out all of these teachers that unless you have a lot of funds, sometimes young families you can't homeschool your children. You can try, but I mean, it's not free. There's a lot of people that aren't able to do it.
That's right. I mean, a lot of, and that's of course by design. I mean, once you had the Civil Rights Act of '65, you could only afford to have the number of kids you could afford to send to private schools, and homeschooling wasn't a thing then. Now, of course, it's a lot more common. We've always homeschooled, but...
It's in the private schools as well.
That's right. The private schools now, I mean, I went to a private Christian school, very elite private Christian academy that was a segregation. They used to call them that at the time. They don't call them segregation academies anymore, but we would sing Dixie in the morning and do Bible and all that. Now it's basically as...
well, all these Christian teachers are...
That's right.
Universities that are
and these private schools still have to be accredited. And to get that, you're going to have to go along with a lot of that. Now they still do.
That's why I like Trump's idea.
Yeah, you got to. It's certainly got to be turned back. I mean, dismantling the federal Department of Education is a good first step. Returning power to the states, which is done on a lot of things.
And also they can take it where they want to take it.
Well, they've done it with abortion. If you can do it with abortion, you can do it with education. And certainly, a state like Tennessee is going to educate its kids a lot differently than places like New York. So, local control.
We're observing a lot of conflicting opinions as a rift in society. I found that influencewatch.org is a good resource for finding out the organizations that are responsible for organizing to destroy the civilization. Do you ever focus on the subversion of this country that was brought to more attention in the individuals, the actual people who were
Can we talk about Jews now?
Well, not even institutionally, if you talk about Zionism, but the actual people who are, being trained by certain organizations that have done, for example, burning down cities and so forth.
Well, yes. I mean, we're a current affairs show, and we talk about what's in the news by and large. I mean, we have some special series, and we'll chase some rabbits on certain things. But yes, I mean, we've talked about over the course of 21 years on the radio, and 3 hours a week, and we've talked about that. Sure. I mean, we've tried to shine a light on some of the power and influence that is causing these dramatic shifts away from the America that people once knew to whatever we have become or were becoming up until January and may become again after 2028.
The reason, or the point I guess that I'm getting at is you have a movement of truth that is being claimed by different groups. For example, Truth Social, right? By
Yeah.
Trump. I never went on there, by the way, but I'm making a documentary called Truth, covering a wide variety of topics. What I pay attention to is actually I look at what the Satanists and the Marxists are saying in their social media. And so I see what their agendas are and their plots and everything. And the thing is, when you go with the news media, like you're saying you discuss on your show, you never really see what the enemy is doing behind the scenes.
Okay, I see exactly what you're getting at now. Right, well, you're talking about alternative social media platforms. Go to their thing, Sky Blue, whatever they have now, their left-wing Twitter. And it is amazing and really eye-opening. If you think we're the ones that are the problems and we're the recalcitrants that don't want to come together, they absolutely say that we deserve to die. And this is not an uncommon opinion at all in the left. Right. That there was a poll that came out, and I can't remember amongst self-avowed liberals, it was certainly the majority that think it's justified to assassinate Trump and Musk, for instance. But they certainly would do it to people like us, if they'll do it to people like that. So, yeah, I mean, no, you're right. I mean, above and beyond the establishment leftists that are in the news, their base, our base, we want to go to church, we want to raise families, we want to, be left alone. Their base absolutely is bloodthirsty. Yeah. So, yeah, that does need to be talked about more.
Hi.
Hey.
I'm the state director of this, the only Republican Get Out the Vote program. It's called 10X Votes.
Yeah.
And we were very successful in this last term.
I saw.
Yeah, and we're the only legislature to flip from Democrat to Republican. And I'm one of, he mentioned the Electoral College. I'm one of the presidential electors for Michigan.
Wow.
So keep that in mind as I ask my question.
Sure.
As a, pretty high-level Republican. You said not Trump, but something else will bring about our reestablishment of a cohesive nation, and that's true. We've had some successes, as I said, here in Michigan. But as great as all that is, all of our accomplishments that we just recently experienced across the country with this great landslide Mr. Trump experienced, can we really rely on Republicans to defeat multiculturalism once and for all? And is there something more radical that would have more success than the Republican Party? And as the current system loses its legitimacy, as you said, are the people ready yet for any such radical change?
I think to answer your last question first, they're becoming increasingly more comfortable with it, that's for sure. But these are great questions, and I think if you look at the Republican Party in Trump's first term compared to what it is now, you can see that a lot of those have been replaced, and he has whipped. I mean, the Republican Party right now is basically Trump's party, and by and large that is a good thing. But as I said before, societal trends and political expediency is just really the thing that caused so many people to adopt their position at any given time. And so right now, with Trump, we're in high cotton because he, for the most part, is in agreement with us. We're in agreement with him on most of the things that he would do on an issue-by-issue basis. So right now, the Republican Party looks pretty good because he is there to keep them in line. But see, what I'm concerned about is what happens after that. The Republican Party as a vehicle in and of itself, of course, I mean, where were they until Trump? They were terrible.
Right.
I mean, I voted for Ron Paul in the Republican primary, and I never voted for another Republican until Trump. I always voted Constitution Party, Third Party, Independents, you know, just what, I never missed a vote, but I never voted Republican. And so in and of themselves, no, that doesn't encourage me very much. But if you've got a strong man and a guy who is winning on these issues, I mean, they opposed him on every issue. I mean, I remember when Jeff Sessions came out for Trump, and that was just such a big deal because all the Republicans were fighting Trump. They were competing with the Democrats to see who could denounce him harder and, you know, be real conservatives or whatever they were calling it. So in and of itself, the Republican Party, I don't have a lot of faith in, but with a good steward as the head of the party, and as long as these are winning issues, and they are getting elected on Trump issues, then they will do good for us. And right now they are doing good for us, and it'll continue as long as they have leadership and can continue to get the results they need to get elected. And of course, we come in to play there. So.
And people don't realize, by the way, I mean, Trump is a very unusual figure. I know a lot of people are not satisfied. I know people in this room are not satisfied with Trump. He's not good enough, or maybe he's a sellout or whatever. But have you forgotten? This is the party that gave us George Bush the elder. I mean, they gave us Bob Dole. They gave us Bush Jr. They gave us John McCain and Mitt Romney. And Jeb Bush was supposed to be the guy in 16. Are you kidding me? That's really...
That's it. Yeah, that's what they had for us. Can you imagine? Jeb and Hillary?
God.
That's what was coming. So listen, I get, you know, if you
forgotten people.
I get this all the time. You know, sometimes people will only email you to complain. So you can always find a point of contention with anybody. This is important. You can always find a co-host of mine. He died. As I get older, more people die. But yes, I don't know. But he told me something that I never forgot. A long time ago, he said, James, people can justify anything.
That's right.
And so you can always find a reason not to support somebody. If you're looking for a reason not to support somebody, it's always going to be there, whether it's me or anybody or John or Buchanan or Trump. And Trump is not perfect, but we really, and this is just an old saying, but it's true, we really don't need to let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
That's really good. That's a good saying.
Talking about secession, the last two major ones we had from Britain in 1776 in the South, the point men were largely clergy in the pulpits. I guess mine was more an observation than a question, but I just don't think even the conservative Christian church in America is yet rallying around the kind of ideas that was articulated this morning. Your story with your pastor and what happened with the Southern Baptists. The PCA has got overtures before them. That's Presbyterian Church in America, another Reformed denomination, on the race issues. There are guys that I know that are friends that are being run out of town and being defrocked. That is, they're having their ordination taken away from them because of. They agree with even the mildest sentiments of what was expressed here today. I went through my own juggernaut with that in 2000 or whatever it was. So I'm all for secession. I've been saying that for a long time. But I don't know that the people who need to be most ready for it, that is the church supporting it, I don't know if it's there. Just an observation.
I would love to talk about this for just a second. And by the way, that Pastor, you are a hero of mine. I want you to know that. You're a hero of mine. And I love you. And
You need to get more heroes.
no, I don't. No, well, maybe I do, but you're certainly one of them. But and I'm honored that everybody is here today. But I'm really honored that you came out. And this is an issue, of course. And he mentioned I grew up as a Southern Baptist, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience going to a rural Southern Baptist, small Southern Baptist church. In Memphis, and the pastor who was the pastor of that church, he's in his late 70s now and not in good health. And so that church disbanded a few years ago. He had a stroke, and it was a small congregation and an older congregation. And so after he wasn't able to continue his ministry, the congregation dispersed and went to join other fellowships. But before that happened, he was the pastor for my grandparents when I was growing up, my parents. I mean, I was born, literally into that church. He had just become a pastor when I was born. was there in the early 80s. And I just grew up with this guy. I mean, every Sunday morning going to church and singing the hymns, and it was just, about 60 people in church if everybody showed up, on a Sunday morning. It was just a great, close-knit Southern fellowship, and he was just a great guy, is a great guy, great, conservative. He speaks out politically like Pastor Brett does. Actually, before he had a stroke, he used to come on and deliver our Christmas and Easter messages, and now Pastor Brett does that for us. But he helped me when I ran for office. He has officiated the funerals of any family member who ever died. He introduced me to my wife. He was the reason I met her. He was at the hospital when all my kids were born. Just a great, great, great man. And but a few years ago, the Southern Baptist Convention a few years ago was so disgusting. I don't want to get into insider baseball. I doubt there's a lot of Southern Baptists up here in Michigan. But you can get what I'm getting at. As evangelicals, as conservative Christians, what was coming out of the head table of the denomination was just awful. And it all coincided with Trump. You had Russell Moore, if you know who he is. All right, yeah, Russell Moore. I got the right response. So this is a guy who had Confederate ancestors. He's from Mississippi. And he was saying that the Confederate flag, and of course the whole Southern Baptist denomination exists because of the split over whether or not slave owners could be missionaries. That's why the whole Southern Baptist thing even started. They were all Confederates. And he said, well, the Christian flag and the Confederate flag cannot sit side by side without one catching the other on fire and things like that. And he was so anti-Trump. You can't be a Christian and vote for Trump. And you can't be a Christian and honor your Southern ancestors. And you can't be a Christian and do basically anything that was Christian. So I started speaking out about that on the radio as a Southern Baptist. I said, somebody's got to take this guy to task. And he was doing all these public appearances. He was the Southern Baptist media spokesman. So he would go on and just basically, this is what you were getting on CNN, and he had a regular op-ed in like the New York Times. Like, what Southern Baptist gets an op-ed in the New York, a regular column in the New York Times? And it was all this just anti-conservative bilge. And so we started taking him to task on the radio and telling the truth in love. But I said, I think you're supposed to honor your mother and your father, and I'm not going to denigrate my Southern ancestors who fought in that war, and I love them. And they're heroes to me. And anyway, while all this was going on, 2016, 2017, my pastor called me one night. And he said, hey, James, I just got a call from the Southern Baptist Convention. And I knew instantly. I knew where he was going. And he said, I said, well, what'd they say, Pastor? Now, keep in mind, he worked on my campaign, and he did all this, came on the show many times. He knows exactly who I am and who I'm not, importantly. And he said, well, they said that I need to take action against you and discipline you and remove you from the church. And he told me about the conversation. He said, well, what did James, he told me what he was asking them on the telephone call. And he said, well, what did James do that requires this discipline? And they said, well, the Southern Poverty Law Center said, he's a Southern Baptist denominational headquarter leadership using the Southern Poverty Law Center as the source for these things. The pastor?
There was a case in Tennessee with a PCA church going back maybe 15 years ago, maybe even longer, but it was, as I said, a Presbyterian church, and that church broke in half, and the PCA hammered the half that had to leave, and they used as their reasoning SBLC information.
See, I mean, these antichrists, and an enemy to the church, and of course, Pastor, you've had your own. I mean, you stood like a man and as a true Christian warrior against the Southern Poverty Law Center when they came after you and your congregation, so you know. But and then he said, well, then they said, well, CNN said this about James. And so here you have these, purportedly Christian leaders of this major, I mean, it's the biggest Protestant denomination in the country, citing the SPLC and CNN. And he said, well, listen, I know James, and I've known him my whole life, and I don't find him to be in violation or in need of any discipline. And he said, I'm sorry that you're using these people as your sources, but you just don't know what you're talking about. And of course, the whole thing is, if you read the biblical if you read in the Bible, there are steps on how to discipline a wayward brother. First, you come to the brother himself personally, and you try to square your conflict. And if that can't happen, you bring other brothers with you. And if that doesn't work, you bring it before the church. Well, what did they do? They went straight to my pastor and told him to expel me because the SPLC had said this. And then he
Straight to excommunication.
Straight to excommunication.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I can't do that. And they said, well, we have to tell you that if you don't remove him from your membership, we're going to disfellowship your entire congregation.
Awesome. Good. Hope that happens.
And he said, well, you're going to have to do what you're going to have to do. And he called me and he told me all that. And I said, Pastor, call them back. I said, you call them back. I said, this is not your cross to bear, and I appreciate you doing this. And if I can hang my hat on one thing in life, I just want to remember for being loyal to my friends and to my brothers, but I never expect it back because it's difficult. I ask for people to do it, but I never, I have come to expect when the heat gets turned on to people that they're going to roll. And I didn't expect it out of him, but I told him that I wanted him to call them back and just tell them whatever they needed to hear, and I wouldn't take it personally, and that's fine because this isn't his place today. He said, you're wrong about that. He said, I'm your pastor. It is my place to deal with this. And he said, I'm not doing this because I love you. I'll never forget this. It brought tears to my eyes when he told me this on the phone, because this is a lifelong friend, a family member. And he said, I'm not doing this because I love you. He goes, James, you know I love you. But I'm not doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do.
Amen.
And then when they had their convention, later that summer, they did disfellowship the church. But so that goes back to your point, is you've got a big problem in the churches at that level. But if you go to any, at least rural Southern Baptist church, still to this day, in the pews,
That's right.
in the pews, the actual people, and most people don't have any idea what's going on at the denominational headquarters of these churches.
right.
In the pews, you will have people that would be right at home in this meeting, by and large, no doubt about it. And but that is the problem, is that the people in the pews and the people who vote Republican, for instance, are not always represented by their leaders. And so you're definitely going to have a change in leadership, but it is hard for good people to do that because most people who are good aren't professional activists. They have to work, so they can't run for a seat in the SBC executive committee and things like that. But you are going to have to take it over. There is a very strong movement of Christian nationalist pastors that are out there. They had a big convention in Dallas, in the Dallas area, a couple of weeks ago. Joel Webbin is one. I don't know if these names ring any bell, but there are some Christians that are beginning to take hold. But you are right. I mean, the church, we need, just as we needed. Look, if you were a young, irreligious Trump voter who was not raised in the church, you couldn't but look at the church and gag now. And so you're going to have, just as we need a charismatic and forceful alpha type guy like Trump to clean out, some of these, the Republican Party.
Make a Christian to go to church again.
We need that. What's that?
Make a Christian to go to church.
Yeah, make a Christian to go to church. You are going to make a Christian to go to church again. You're going to have people, though, that are going to clean out these denominations and remove the cuts from the pulpits. So, yeah, it's important. But the church can be, and it should be, the tip of our spear. But we're going to have to take back our churches too.
Yeah. We're moving that over to the window. Dennis, you're next. By the way, you mentioned that you got 20% of the vote when you ran for...
Well, I'll round it up. I mean, in math, 15% and up moves up to 20. But it was between 15 and 20, I'll say
I just
that.
want to bring it to your attention that that's Ross Perot level. That's what he did in '92. So.
Well, I got a radio show out. I'm here today because of it.
Okay, when Steve passed, we mourned him. Bob passed this year, and he was murdered by Jewish psychiatrists in Sparrow Hospital.
That's right.
We all saw it being brutally murdered with risperidone and Haldol. And I want to commemorate Bob. Everybody here that knows him, that went to his funeral, we watched him being murdered. These were by Jews.
By the state. And black.
Get them all! Get them all! By the way, I'm gonna try. Bob has an enormous book collection, so I think at the next conference I'm going to get a hold of just boxes of his books, and we're going to put them on that table. He has them heavily highlighted and all that, and we're just going to put them on the table. People can just take them for free and have a memento.
Yeah, I mean, you see
October.
terrible things, people incarcerated unjustly, sometimes people murdered. I don't know if I know the gentleman you're talking about or their stories, but...
He was here in 16 when he was supposed.
He's been here every time for many years.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that again just reinforces the point. Do what you can while you can. Make hay while the sun shines. I mean, we have some very powerful and some very evil enemies. And anything's on the table for them.
Okay, I have a question.
Oh, okay.
That was just, I wanted to commemorate him because of this group.
And that is important to remember the people who have gone. Not a lot of people do that. It should always be done.
I've never seen anybody murdered.
Until then.
He was murdered right in front of our eyes.
That's something I haven't experienced myself.
Yeah, it's not very common. Anyway, my question is about some people that we've had here before. Jared Taylor, Brother Nathaniel, and Brother Nathaniel was on with E. Michael Jones last night. I watched them. And they talked about this white question. And E. Michael Jones is confused about it. And they also talked about Nick Fuentes. So Nick Fuentes reminds me in many ways of you. I mean, there's certain similarities. You're young compared to me. Anyway, and you're both wise on the Jewish question. So, have you ever had any interaction with Nick? Has he ever? He disses a lot of people, and did you have any interaction with him, or did you have any? Did you watch this debate between Brother Nathaniel and E. Michael Jones?
No, if it happened last night, I was, as John said, driving up here. We were driving all day and night. We got here about 1 a.m.
I don't know the timing it happened, but I saw it last night.
I did not see that. No, I have not seen their debate. Nick Fuentes did come and speak at an event that I put together in Chattanooga. I think 2019. He is about 20 years younger than me, and most of my friends are about 40 years older than I am. So, I do know who he is. I have met him. I agree with a lot of the things that he says, and disagree with a lot of the things that he says, especially some of this stuff going on now with Kanye West. And
at least you still have friends.
yeah, right. They're not all dead, but I tell you, my phone is like Hotel California. If you ever got in. As a phone number contact, you're just in there, and then as I scroll through for numbers now, like half of them are not here anymore. But I do know Brother Nathaniel Kapner well, and he has been a guest on many, many times, and I love people like that. I mean, if you get righteous Jews and honest, blacks like Jesse Lee Peterson and our friend here who help you, that's great. I mean, I always welcome that. And Brother Nathaniel's, a little eccentric, but he comes on my show usually once a year, and he is a truth teller. And E. Michael Jones, though, while he's great on the Jewish issue, he is terrible on the race issue.
Yes.
Terrible on the race issue. And I always thought, well, like, race is like the entry-level thing. I can remember watching some of this stuff when I was a kid. I was like, well, I kind of understand, the racial stuff, because I live in Memphis, majority black city, so I understand about crime and all the things that kind of come up, prop up in those communities. I said, what did the Jews ever do? And then, of course, as I learned, this is when I was, a kid, 12 years old. But, so you would think that if somebody is wise on the Jewish question, that the race would be, more elementary. But Brother Nathaniel's good on both. E. Michael Jones, good on one, terrible on the other.
Yes.
Which is kind of interesting. But, no, I did not see that debate. But I do know Nick. And my thing, though, on working with people is, and one of the things that I've got a reputation for is just being a guy who, and I've worked hard at it. I mean, it's not really hard work, it's just who I am. It is really my personality and my general disposition is, I will look for any reason to work with somebody, whereas some people look for any reason to complain about somebody or break bonds of fellowship with them. If I agree with you on one issue, the more the better. But if I agree with you on one issue, I will come together with you on that issue and work with you and talk to you about that and have you on to talk about it. And I think we'd all be better off if people did more of that. But yeah, so I can focus on the areas of agreement instead of disagreement with anybody, whether it be Nick or you, Michael Jones, or anybody else.
Okay, good, thank you.
As the